Okay, let's talk about what's next for every team that lost in round one. Real quick on Lakers Warriors, my plan is to throw the prediction of that into the video where I react to Celtics Sixers game one and Nuggets Suns game two, which will probably be tomorrow. Because as of this moment, I have no idea with that series. I need a day to think about that. Okay, let's start with the Bucks just because I think that was still like the biggest what the hell just happened round one loss. Look, maybe they're going to fire Budenholzer, maybe they won't. I'm not going to fault them if they do. If they're not going to fire him, at the least, can we consider, I don't know, an offensive-minded assistant coach or something? I don't know. I do think Nick Nurse is a popular guy to imagine what it would look like, because of course he's on the market right now, and I mean, both he and Budenholzer are defensive coaches, but I feel like their approaches are a little different. Now, granted, once the Raptors got Pirtle, Nurse was a little more okay with playing a safer defense, but, Nurse, he does like a aggressive defense with more aggressive help, busting out crazy like zones or full court presses sometimes. Like he is a bit more of a sometimes go crazy coach than Budenholzer, whereas Budenholzer's more of a, no, we know what we want to do and we're going to basically stick to what we do. So that'd be interesting, but I have no idea if it's going to happen. As far as the roster, so they need Brook. They don't have a way to replace his defense, especially given their salary situation. If he were not on the team, they would still be over the cap. And we got to remember now, with the new CBA, if you are over, 17 million above the luxury tax, then you're restricted on certain moves. You can't add salary in a trade. Makes it much more difficult to do sign and trade stuff. Anyway, I know some people have been imagining like Chris Middleton trades, Drew Holiday trades. There was that thing about Drew recently where he was like, yeah, I'm kind of adamant on retiring once my contract is up, which that was like, okay, that's a little interesting. But anyway, if I just had to make a bet, and you already know what I'm going to say here, I don't think Drew and Middleton are getting traded. I mean, look, they're both north of 30. They're both very decently paid right now. Middleton's going to have 1 year left after he accepts his player option. Maybe that makes it a little interesting. I don't even know if teams care about expirings like that anymore. But also, the Bucks just don't have a lot of their own picks to move, right? And so it's like, if you would like to trade either one of those guys with the hopes of improving immediately, I'm not really sure where that trade is. Also, here's a hot take about Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton, because it's crap on the Bucks hour. They're both good players. Look, I think Middleton is trending upwards, and I think another offseason of recovery. Is it crazy to believe we could see 85, 90% of the best Middleton of like 3 years ago? I don't know. With the Giannis Middleton pick and roll being the backbone of, getting them to the finals and winning it and all that. Drew, look, I get it. His shot selection in the playoffs can be annoying. I just kind of feel like you need the guys, man. Given, you're not going to make some trades to sort of get worse now to try to be better later because, you got Giannis. Like, you're really going to try to do that? Besides that, look, they could use just another all-around guy. Like, they've got a bunch of dudes. Javon Carter's an on-ball defender. Joe Ingles, good passer, good three-point shooter. Pat Connaughton, usually a good shooter. He was kind of down in the regular season this year. Grayson Allen, good shooter. Jay Crowder, the hope was a versatile defensive player who could hopefully make enough shots. If you could just find like a sort of all-in-one dude for all those dudes, that'd be great. They have some tradable money, and maybe you could use like Marshawn Beauchamp as effectively a pick in a deal. Granted, he didn't do a whole lot in his rookie season. Then perhaps there's something there, but that's kind of all I got. Also, the DiVincenzo Ibaka trade has not really worked out for him at all. I know DiVincenzo was not playing well when they traded him, even so, like, wouldn't have hurt to have still had him on this roster. Now let's get to the Clippers. Look, Kawhi, he's got a degenerative knee injury. We all get the deal. It's never going away. The load management's always going to be a thing. You hope for the best in the playoffs, and of course when he's playing, he's fantastic. And of course PG's got injury stuff too. They're just kind of between a rock and a hard place, man, because in one sense it's like you go for it, you run it back, and you really hope those guys are healthy, but I mean, we know how it ended up this season. And for what it's worth, if you force me to make a prediction, I think that's what they're going to do. I mean, and look, there's Marcus Morris has got like an expiring contract coming up. Robert Covington's got one. They've got a Bucks pick this year. They've got Bones Highland, who they could look to improve, or also he could be used effectively as a draft pick in a trade, The most that they can re-sign Westbrook for is $3.8 million because they don't have his bird rights, so, I mean, we'll just see with that. You got the Plumlee contract. Because of the new CBA rules, their chances of actually making like crazy trades that's kind of about it. On the other end of it, you could say, hey, trade Kawhi and PG, try to get the most for him, go in a different direction with this whole thing. Well, I kind of feel like Steve Ballmer's just not really wired for that. I mean, I already said, like, I think they're going to go with the run it back option. And the other thing, too, is, like, because of Kawhi's knee stuff and his age and all that, don't get me wrong, you would get stuff for Kawhi. He's still a fantastic player, no doubt. But would you get the haul return, like all the picks and all the young players and all that stuff? Like, I don't know. And then in the sense of a Paul George trade, I mean, if you were going to keep Kawhi, then you want to maximize your chances of winning right now, which I assume would just be with keeping Paul George on your roster. So again, rocking a hard place. Option A, go for it, and it might all be for naught because of health. Option B, we really don't want to give up on either one of these guys. We feel like we're really, really close if just it breaks 1 year for us. And also the return might not be what we truly love deep down anyway. Now let's go to the Grizzlies. So we will see if the loss to the Lakers, just how it affects their personality as a team. Like, I imagine they're still going to be trash talking and all that stuff, but maybe the overconfident stuff, like we're fine in the West and all that, will settle down after this. Look, man, as far as the roster is concerned, they need a really good two-way wing. I believe the reports after the deadline suggested that they actually did offer a good amount of draft picks for OG Anunoby, and they were not able to get him. We can see if that pops up again in the offseason. One thing with the trade machine on the Grizzlies, though, is that it does get a little awkward because I think they need Luke Kennard shooting. We all know how good Tyus Jones has been for them as a backup point and also a fill-in for Ja, point guard. Granted, at the same time, for as much as we love him for his assist-to-turnover stuff, he was scoring basically 3 points a game in the playoffs against the Lakers, you know? And they've also got a bunch of young dudes like Aldama and Zaire Williams, who they both like, I imagine. So we'll see what the trade market looks for. And besides that, look, Jaren Jackson's growth in the post that we saw this season, you just got to keep it going. That's about it. Giving Desmond Bane just more reps on the ball, which, I mean, like, listen, his growth through 3 seasons has been pretty wild. And, yeah, you know, Dylan Brooks, it might be done with him in Memphis. I mean, he's a free agent. Look, the on-ball defense, the toughness is still there. I think the ideal role for Brooks would be coming off the bench. You know, the shooting, it just is what it is. He just doesn't make shots enough. And he also shoots too much. Speaking of two-way wing, that is probably the number one thing that Cleveland would like to find. It's just, look, you know, they traded for Donovan Mitchell, and, I mean, most people like the Mitchell trade. I like the Mitchell trade, so I'm not going to sit here and then be like, well, what the hell? They don't have any picks. Like, there's a reason. They got Donovan Mitchell. But when you try to find that last piece, like, if you could just give Okoro a three-point shot, we're not having this conversation. I mean, I get it. He got up to 36% from three in the regular season. It was on 2 attempts a game. You know, it is what it is. He's still a good defender and all that. Besides all that, if I'm not mistaken, they most likely will have their full mid-level of $12 million. They better nail that, because there were stretches of the Knicks series where it's like, oh, wait a minute. The depth is pretty rough right now. I think they're going to bring back Karis LeVert. We'll see what it costs them if it is below like $20 million a season or whatever. Besides that, look, Evan Mobley's just got to get better. He was showing a lot of signs, ball handler, post-up guy, mid-range jump shots and all that. I said it enough times. Just didn't hit the same in the playoffs. I think they could be good to find like more ways for Garland and Mitchell to directly play off of each other. It's a little tough because if you're going to run a screen with those two, a lot of times teams can switch that. But I don't know. We'll see. Some general toughness improvements from Mobley and Allen as well, because Mitchell Robinson, he was just tougher. No other way to put it in that series. And we just go from there. Now let's go to the Kings. So first off, Domantas Sabonis needs to refine his post game, if you will. Like he's got post moves, but a lot of it's like, you know, put my shoulder into a dude and just get my left hand going pretty much. And the Warriors guarded that well, of course. You're going to bank on more Keegan Murray improvements. And sure, in the playoffs, it was more so just catch and shoots. But in the regular season, like he was doing a little bit more attacking off the catch. And we'll see if they want to give him more ball handling duties in his second season. I would imagine, yeah, sure. We'll see what it looks like. The Harrison Barnes contract is probably the big thing right now, just as far as moves are concerned. And I know Kings fans are pretty mad at Barnes because of his performance in the playoffs. And okay, yeah, I get it. He was good in the regular season. I know Kings fans are mad at him right now. Really would not surprise me if he was back. Look, I think the absolute perfect power forward next to Sabonis for this team and all that is a guy who can be a great weak side help defender, rim protector, play some center for you as well, while still being able to make shots. And the chances of finding those types of guys are very low, and you typically only find them in the draft, because once teams have those types of guys, they're very rarely going to give them up. Also, if you're thinking about the Kings making like some big move if a star becomes available or whatever, well, they've got a draft pick that's locked up in protections from the Kevin Huerter trade for a few years, so that makes it a little tougher for them to make moves like that. I also don't really think they should be looking to offload picks right now. Let's go to the Hawks next. So Quinn Snyder is going to have an offseason to get the coaching staff he wants in there and have the offense he wants. And I know everybody wants Trae Young flying around off ball. And okay, sure. You know, just some more simple like handoff action starting from the corner. I think also spotting Trae up in the corner as opposed to having him at the top of the key where he does have the tendency to sort of just drift to the half-court line sometimes is an idea. I still think John Collins' place in this team is pretty awkward because they really want, or they've wanted, we'll see if Quinn Snyder views it differently with an offseason under his belt, but they've typically just wanted more of a spot-up guy in that spot, whereas Collins is a, let me set screens and dive to the rim guy. Even if he has some games where he drops like occasionally 20 points or whatever, but there's a lot of like 10-point games in there for him. Look, I think they could use another defensive player, probably one on ball. I also think that if they were going to trade, let's say, Collins and potentially other stuff in the hopes of getting another on-ball defender and all that, am I crazy for believing that they're on the brink of being a little small if they get smaller from trading Collins? I don't know. I mean, Collins is not a great defensive player. He's certainly gotten better, and I think when he and Capella are out there together, like that's about the biggest they can get. So I don't know. Also, the Hawks, they could be in the luxury tax next season. They're kind of hovering around it right now, so I don't know if that'll affect them trying to cut costs in different areas. But hey, for all that talk, if you just want to look at the regular season performance, they were 7th on offense, they were 22nd in defense. Like, it could just be a matter of give Quinn Snyder one other good defensive player and we're off and rolling. Okay, let's talk the Nets. So, Mikal Bridges is great. Claxton became every NBA nerd's favorite player this year. Part of me still wants to do the whole like Cam Johnson can average 20 points a game thing just based off of his three-point attempts going up. But also it's like, dude is 27. He might just kind of be what he is, which is just like a damn good 17 points a game guy who gives you the spacing and all that. I know these guys have been a popular sort of imagine them trading for a star player team because they got more picks now and all that. And we'll see if anything like that happens. But look, for me, outside of Mikal, Cam, and Claxton, you could kind of convince me that anybody besides Ben Simmons is going to get traded, and with Ben, it's just because of the contract. And I mean, we know his situation with the back and potentially just confidence things of going to the basket and all that. But anybody else, Finney Smith, Dinwiddie, Joe Harris, Royce O'Neal, I could see any of them getting moved. They've all got value. I mean, of course, the 3-and-D stuff with Dorian as well as Royce. And then in the case of Dinwiddie, Dinwiddie, he was the primary ball handler after the deadline, and he did get to, 9 assists per game, which if you want to look at that, you can. I mean, the stat is right there. But even so, it was a lot of Dinwiddie. I mean, he led them in touches per game and time on the ball by a very large margin, and I don't think I like that version of this Nets team as much, with Dinwiddie being by far the number one ball handler. We've seen Dinwiddie in his best role be as a secondary guy playing off of Luka. You don't want to tear this thing down to the complete bottom. Like, I imagine you'd want to still remain somewhat respectable, but I wouldn't be shocked if a good amount of these guys were moved in the offseason, because I just imagine good teams would be willing to give up stuff to get them. And then finally, we got the T-Wolves. So the first thing is that Edwards is going to get his max contract this offseason. And after that, man, basically run it back and just hope things go better. Conley's better for this team than D'Lo is. Hopefully he just doesn't age 5 years effectively in one offseason. You hope Cat doesn't get hurt and misses 3 months or whatever next season, to where you have more time to figure the offense stuff out. I think you bank on a little more defensive improvement from Edwards, because from a physical standpoint, Edwards has the potential to be a great defensive player, and he's already shown signs, definitely. Jaden is great. I think Gobert, still really good, even if he was 5% worse or whatever than he was with the Jazz. I don't know if the Gobert-Kyle Anderson incident has any meaning at this point. I gotta be honest, while it was a big thing in the moment, part of me was okay, is this actually gonna end up mattering in 3 days? So for what that means, I don't know.